All right, Noblesville, here is our next step in our goal setting process. So my overall goal for today's presentation is that we take some of the pieces that we've talked about before. So some of the videos that we started with talking about general thoughts and talking about destinations and targets, and the videos that we talked about behaviors and actions and habits and attitudes. We're going to take all of those pieces to this puzzle that we've talked about, and we're going to put it into a format that you can go through with bullet points and start this process so that it's organized. All right, because one of the things I know that can happen is you get all these things and you start thinking about all these behaviors and actions and habits and skills and destinations and targets, and they just kind of float around, and getting them into a format that is easily organized and understood is a big part of you being successful with these goals. So we're going to go a little presentation. Some of the pieces in the beginning here are just kind of reiterations, maybe different ways to say certain things, focusing on or giving you a little bit more detail and background to some of these things that we've talked about before. So my first point here is, can you think bigger than where you are now? And a lot of times this is really easy. And sometimes this can be pretty difficult. So I'll give you a couple different examples, right? Let's say you just got your first divisional cut and you're not that far off of your first state cut. Pretty easy for you to say, I want to be at the state meet. That's bigger than where you are now. I've also seen in the past some swimmers who achieved their goals. They hit these pieces that they've been going for, and it's harder for them to think bigger. Like, I just accomplished this, and I don't know what the next step is. So I think this is a good place for you to start with this process is, can you think bigger than where you are now? That's really important as we lay out the organizational to this. Here's an awesome quote by one of the USA Swimming Masters coaches. He's a guy that I've known for a long time. He's done many coaching clinics. Bob Steele, he's an awesome dude. So one of his big quotes that has always resonated with me is, expectations and attention determines your success and the success of your team. All right, so it's important for you to understand that this goal setting process, although there's a very individual component to this, it also impacts a much larger group than just yourself. So the goal setting process, although it works really well for individuals, as everyone as individuals is doing this goal setting process, it starts to impact and determine the success of your team. Okay, so before we get too far, let's talk about expectations. Expectations are a double-edged sword. They can be the reason for success or the reason for failure. So coaches see this a lot. There is a balance to this, and you have to understand the balance to this, right? So sometimes those expectations create too much stress, too much worry, too many concerns, and you see those expectations kind of put too much weight on a swimmer, and it's the reason that they don't achieve the goal they want. But at the same time, those expectations can be the reason for success. So understanding the balance is really important, okay? And we've talked about that in some of the previous videos, like understanding that although you're going to set a timeline and a goal period for when you get that, it's really easy. Like a lot of you guys, like end of the year, I want to have this achieved. Sometimes it doesn't happen to that timeline. So that expectation there can fuel you, but it also needs to be flexible, right? Behavior expectations equal performance expectations. Another way you can say this, process before outcome, right? So how do the athletes at your desired level of competition act? We talked about that before. What habits do they have? What can you copy from them? We talked about that in a previous video. What are the behavior expectations of a swimmer where you want to be at your destination? All right, so you need to identify what behaviors you need to change to accomplish your goals. You want to get to that destination. What are the behaviors that you need to change or put into your system that gets you to where you want to go? Okay, so I like to think in performance expectations in really broad strokes. Okay, so instead of really focusing in on performance expectations for individual swimmers, where it might be more beneficial to focus in on behavior expectations, for our whole team, I think it's good to look at performance expectations. So what are the team's expectations for level of performance? What are they for practice, dry lands? How do we look to outsiders? So another team comes and looks at us. We're out in our community. How do we look? Do we all show up to a swim meet wearing the right color of shirt? Socially, what are our expectations when we have a team gathering at an area? What are our expectations? Are we going to clean up the area after us, or is it just going to be we're going to leave trash sitting around? You add all of these things together, and you now have our culture. So I think these things are really important. They all play a role. So like I said, whereas an individual, you should be more focused on the behavior expectations, as a program, it's important to focus in on these performance expectations. And the cool thing is we have lots of groups that make up the Noblesville Swim Club. So it's not like the performance expectations of one group are going to be exactly the same as the performance expectations in another group. It's important for each group to take ownership in these, because that is ultimately going to grow the culture and build the culture to something better. We have big performance expectations for like the end of the road, but there's all of these little steps along the way that are important for each group to kind of make their own and create that culture so that we're very strong. So let's talk about attention. Okay, we talked about expectations, so let's talk about the attention. Okay, brain power equals body power. When and where do you place your focus? Christian Lorenz in his video talked a lot about this. So it's what do you focus on? The details matter. You've got to take ownership of the details. Your coaches can't do it for you. So personal accountability, workout sets and details, race details and review. All right. All of these things are really, really important. That's your brain power. That's what you should be focusing your brain power towards, because that's going to equal body power, right? Do you take ownership and accountability of the details that you're given in a set? Are you paying attention to the details in a workout or a set? Right now we're doing all these dryland workouts, and if you see that in a workout it's saying squat to depth and hold for 5 seconds, are you actually squatting down deep enough, and are you holding there for a full 5 seconds? It's a big question, right? Because that is going to say a lot to how well you're going to get towards those goals. And then communicate. I always say eyes and ears first, voice second. Okay, the answer has already been given to you most of the time. And I think that's really important for you to remember. You should try to go from working for your coach to working with your coach. So what does that mean? That means there's a balance and a give and take, right? Eyes and ears first, voice second. So if you demonstrate to your coach day in and day out that you're going to do what they ask, that you're going to put the focus to the details, that you're going to trust their process, then they are going to be able to work more with you. And they're going to maybe ask you, how do you feel about this? Or how do you feel about that? Right? That's working with your coach. It's hard to do that with the swimmers that don't listen and trust the process first. If you're not trusting the process, we have to wait until you do trust the process before us as coaches can say, okay, how can we individualize this process towards you? Because it needs to be a partnership, right? So, first things first is the answer often has already been given to you. And a very, very, very easy example of this is how many times does your coach talk to you at the whiteboard, give you the purpose of the set, tell you what the set is, everyone gets back in the water, and there's the one kid that goes, hey, what are we doing? And that's really difficult for coaches, because we just spent all that time trying to give you the details and trying to give you the answers. All you had to do is look and listen. But a lot of times we're more concerned about what's coming out of our mouth in terms of either asking questions to your coach instead of just listening for that answer, and then or talking to your friends and your teammates while a coach is talking. You've got to have the eyes and ears first. And then after you've used the eyes and the ears and you still maybe don't have the answer you want, then use your voice. But communication is a big piece to this puzzle. And the more you communicate effectively, the more you go from working for your coach to working with your coach. Okay, so there's another Bob Steele quote. If you're not a coachable athlete, this is the wrong sport for you. And this is really, really important. Sometimes it's hard to hear. Okay, so what's a coachable athlete? An athlete is someone that embraces change. Coachable athlete embraces feeling weird, embraces the unknown. Coachable athlete is if a coach says, hey, I want you to work on this, instead of thinking, oh, I don't need to work on that, or oh, I know what's best, they try it. Okay, so this is not the sport to not be a coachable athlete. We have a difficult task, which is we move through a substance that we aren't inherently built to move through, right? You look at a fish, you look at a dolphin, those are animals that definitely have been designed to move through water. We don't inherently have that. So we have to overcome a huge technical curve, which is why you have to be coachable as a swimmer. If at first you don't succeed, try doing what your coach told you the first time. It's one of my favorite quotes. I always see it on Facebook. I always hear it from other coaches. What are the things that you have heard over and over and over again from your coaching staff? And then why are you not changing them? I always kind of joke that at the end of the day, I've been saying the same things to swimmers over and over and over for my entire career. You know, coaches would love to think that they're always giving these really high detailed, high next level pieces of the puzzle. And the swimmer comes out of their race and they come over and it's like, okay, we're going to talk about this little 2-degree change we can make to your pull to make you faster. The reality is what we end up telling you is the same thing we've been telling you in practice every single day, and you're still not doing it in meets, and we just end up repeating it the entire year. So at the end of the day, be coachable, right? Be coachable. The most successful athletes are the ones that when they're asked to make a change, they make the change and they put all of their effort into making that change until it is solidified. All right? Be coachable. And understand your coaches don't maybe have the puzzle always figured out, right? When you're making changes, when we're trying to make you better, sometimes we'll try something that doesn't work and we have to go in a different direction. That goes back into being flexible that we talked about in some of the earlier videos. You have to be flexible with a lot of these goals too. But being coachable involves you being flexible. Okay? So with those things in mind, let's talk about the goal process. All right? We've talked about this. Determine your destination. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be at the end? Another thing I want you to add to that is if your destination, getting to your destination doesn't change you, make you a better person, then you need to make your goal bigger. All right? If my goal today was to, or let's say we're back into normal and it's like we have normal practices over the summer, and my goal is to wake up at the same time I wake up every single day and drive into the pool. That's something I do every single day. That goal doesn't make me any better. I've already done that. I do that every single day. So I would probably want to make a different goal. Maybe my goal is to wake up 15 minutes earlier so that I can drink a full glass of water, knowing that it's important to hydrate right when you wake up, right? There's a goal that's going to make me better and it changes my behaviors, okay? So once you've determined your destination, you need to decide when you want it. So that's what we're talking about, putting this down on a calendar, right? Getting it down on paper, saying this is when I want this goal. This puts a little bit of expectations behind the process, but again, be flexible. Sometimes when you want it isn't when the process wants it. So there is a little bit of give and take here. There's a little bit of flexibility you need to have here. Okay. This next bullet point is something new. We haven't talked about this yet, but it is important. List why you want it. Why is this goal important to you? I don't think athletes ask themselves this enough, right? Why is this goal important to you? You're going to determine your destination. You're going to decide when you want it. And then you need to really think about why you want it. And then this is where I always say, be sure your goals are yours and not someone else's. And this is very, very, very difficult at times, especially when you have coaches who want certain things for you. As me as a coach, I've had to work on not overburdening a swimmer with what I think they can accomplish. Okay. I know at times parents always like hearing it, but I know I've always in my entire career have had swimmers who come to me with goals, and it's very obvious that it's not their goal, it's their parents' goal, and that they're not that inspired by the goal. The reality is if you want to achieve this, if you want to get to this destination, it's got to be your destination. You've got to want to be there. you are never going to invest 100% into something that is not your desire. So you've got to make sure these are your goals and not someone else's. Okay. And we'll circle back to that later and kind of wrap this full circle. Okay. The next point is honestly evaluate obstacles in your way. So some of this we've talked about and kind of pieced together, but now we're putting it into this organizational method, right? You need to honestly evaluate obstacles in your way. So you need to be really specific here. The more specific you can be, the better. Okay. So now you need to know what habits you need. So like we talked about earlier and in previous videos, what are the habits of a swimmer that are at your destination? Or even if it's something else, like what the destination you want. What are the habits that other people are using to be there? What are the attitudes that other people are needing or using to be there? All right. And then what are the new skills that you might need to accomplish, right? What are the new techniques you might need to change? All of these things you've got to evaluate because they're potential obstacles in your way. And obstacles isn't necessarily a bad word. I think obstacles in this case is a good word. What are things that you're going to have to adapt and overcome so that you become better, right? So what are those things? And we've talked about those, right? You're looking at swimmers that have been there before and saying, these are the things that they've done, right? You're looking at them and saying, this is how they think about what they do. This is a technique that I see them do. These are all things that you need to be writing down and being very specific about. Next point is set your targets. Okay, so you're going to take everything from part 4 where you're looking at these obstacles and you're looking at the skills you need to learn. You're looking at the attitudes you need to change. And you're looking at all this stuff. And now you are putting a schedule to that. Okay, you're bridging the gap between where you're at now and your destination with these targets. Okay, so maybe step 1 is you know that you need to get a junior national cut in the 100 backstroke. You need to be improving the speed that you are kicking underwater and the distance you're kicking underwater. So maybe that first target you use is focusing on your body line. And once you've adapted your body line underwater, now you're going to start adding in just a set number of kicks. And then you're going to start adding in a tempo of kicks. And you start putting these things onto the schedule to bridge you to your destination. Okay, but you have to use all of those pieces from that 4th step that talks about what are the obstacles, which is why I don't think the obstacles is a bad word, because the obstacles are things that are going to get you to be better. All right, but bridge the gap to your destination with these targets. And then this last piece is the really, really important one. Okay, evaluate and share. And this is what I think we can do we can always do a better job of, but evaluate and share these goals. You need to ask big and sometimes difficult questions. Okay, so one of them I always think about is like, how does your goal impact the priorities in your life? How does your goal impact the people of your life? And then you need to be sharing your goals with your parents, your teammates, your friends, your family. Okay, and this is why. Because if your goal is going to change you, it's going to have an effect on things around you. Okay, so what's the priorities you have in your life? Okay. Swimmers always eventually are faced with, I do 3 sports and I have to pare this down as I get a little bit older. Maybe you're going into, you're deep into your high school. Maybe you're now starting to look at, I could potentially be a college athlete. What do I need to do? What are my priorities here? Does another sport maybe need to take a little bit more of a back seat because of my priority and what I can do here? And that's very difficult to do, right? And it can be very difficult as a coach to guide swimmers through that, right? But what are the priorities in your life, and does your goal impact those priorities? And if so, how? Okay. Does the goal you have impact the people in your life? This is a really important thing to consider, right? This is a really important thing to consider. If you are someone that wants to, if you're someone that really wants to swim at a really high level, let's say you want to go to Olympic trials, okay? There's going to be a lot of demands that you have to meet that might impact the people in your life, okay? And let's just look at going to the meet in general. Olympic trials is a week long. You have to go for an entire week. that means that maybe your family has to take a week off of work, or maybe your family has to take a week off of and spend this money to travel and get the hotel rooms. How does your goal impact the people in your life? You need to share these goals and evaluate these goals with your parents and your teammates and your friends and your family, so they have an understanding of how important it is to you. And along the way, when you're doing this evaluation, you might find like, oh, maybe I need to adjust this goal a little bit, right? Maybe this isn't the priority that I thought it was. But you have to evaluate and share, okay? And if you don't share those, it can be very difficult because you want as much help along the way as you can get. So if you don't share it, and I even forgot on here, share your goals with your coaches. I forgot to put that on there, right? Share your goals with your coaches. It's hard for us to understand what you need to get to a destination if we don't know what that destination is, all right? Share your goals with your parents so they know it's your goal and they know how important it is to you. You say you want to be a state champion. That means you're not going to be able to miss a whole lot of practices and make that happen. So they need to know how important that goal is to you so that they understand the sacrifice they might have to make to get you to practice, right? Teammates. This goes back into talking about every group kind of has a identity, and every group has a set of performance expectations, and the program has a set of performance expectations. If none of you are sharing with one another what you want as a destination, then how do we all get behind you or help support you or help push you through hard times in the sport if we don't know what you're going for? So share with your teammates, share with your friends. This is a big piece right here, okay? Because what's one of the things I always hear from swimmers that they have this goal and they're going after this goal, but they also have friends who are saying, well, why can't you come do this? You always have this. You always have that. Well, do your friends know what your goals are? They might not care. They might not understand, but do they at least know, right? Sharing these things makes them real and makes them important. So, these are all pieces to the puzzle, and it's that this last point is maybe one of the most important points because it's going to allow you to get more help and be more engaged in the process and have more people help you through the process. So, ask the big questions, ask the hard questions. And if you're going through this evaluation process and you realize that maybe you need to revamp it, do it, right? Do it. So, those are all the pieces to the puzzle. So what I would like you to do is to go through those steps, okay? Go through these steps of all of the destinations. So determine a destination, decide when you want it, list why you want it, evaluate the obstacles in your way, set your targets, evaluate, and share. Okay, and one of the things I think is really important for you to do, and we're going to be looking at setting up some opportunities here in the future of sharing, maybe getting some groups on the Zooms and getting with some of the other coaches and seeing if we can make this a possibility where we can start sharing these things so we can all start, coming together a little bit and understanding what everyone is really going for when we get back in the water. So think about those things, write these things down. The last piece I have to all of this is it is important to write these things down, okay? However you get them down. I know we love using these and people type their goals in their phones all the time. That's good. I can tell you that there is a study that says when you use one of these instead, when you actually write your goals down, you're more accountable to them. They mean more to you. Put them in your handwriting. You're going to take more ownership of them that way. So whether you put it on your phone, type it on a Word doc, write it in your hand, write this stuff down. Go through this process. Have a notebook. Put this stuff down. Okay, you need to actively engage in this process and go through some of that over the weekend today, and we'll look towards moving forward and seeing if we can set some things up to where we can get us all sharing. But nothing keeps you from sharing these things with your teammates and your family, as you do them. So I would say if you go through those 6 steps today and you look at them, sit down with your parents and show them and say, hey, these are the things I would like to accomplish. I want you to sit down and look at these with me, and it's something we can all do together. So, thanks for listening. Hopefully, you guys have fun with this process, and we'll see you next time.